afternoon, everyone. My name is Leslie Bourgeois. I'm the archivist at Louisiana Public Broadcasting and the co-chair of the Local Arrangements Committee, and I'll be moderating the session. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping things to get through. We will utilize the Zoom chat for all presenter questions, so please feel free to submit them throughout the session, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. And please feel free to direct chat me if you need anything. So now I'm going to introduce our presenters. First is Megan Rose Kildigian. Hope that's close. The Public Media Digitization Archivist at New Mexico PBS. Next is Katie Rojas, the Manuscripts Archivist at Special Collections at the University of Texas at San Antonio. We have Mary Manning, the University Archivist at the University of Houston Libraries, and Lauren Coe, the Programmer Analyst at the University of North Texas. So without further ado, I'm gonna give it to Megan now. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Before I begin, I just want to say a quick note that after Casey's wonderful plenary this morning, some of this will be repeated information. So I apologize in advance for that, but a lot of it is new, I promise. So go ahead and get going.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for Preserving a Fragile History, Managing Statewide Collaborative Digitization Projects. My name is Megan Rose Kildigian, and I'm the Archivist and Project Manager for the New Mexico Public Media Digitization Project. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that New Mexico PBS and the University of New Mexico sit on the traditional homelands of the Pueblo of Sandia. The original peoples of New Mexico, Pueblo, Navajo, and Apache, since time immemorial, have deep connections to the land and have made significant contributions to the broader community statewide. We honor the land itself and those who remain stewards of this land throughout the generations, and also acknowledge our committed relationship to Indigenous peoples. We gratefully recognize our history. I'd like to just briefly provide a bit of background about New Mexico PBS and the other New Mexico public broadcasting stations involved in this project. New Mexico PBS first signed on the air as KNME TV in 1958 as the first public educational television station in New Mexico. New Mexico PBS serves the people of New Mexico by providing engaging local and national content, in-depth news and public affairs, digital media, education and outreach services, lifelong learning, an interactive website, and a celebration of arts and culture. New Mexico PBS is one of the most watched public television stations in the country, reaching almost 700,000 households each week and with 20,000 members in central and northern New Mexico. New Mexico PBS provides important local programming to the citizens of New Mexico, and our productions have won national and regional awards, including a Peabody Award, a National Emmy, and 40 Regional Emmy. In addition to New Mexico PBS, the New Mexico Public Media Digitization Project includes the collections of 4 other leading public media stations in New Mexico: KENW PBS in eastern New Mexico, KRWG PBS in southwestern New Mexico, KUNM FM at the University of New Mexico, and KANW FM in Albuquerque. These stations have years of original programming representing communities that are often underrepresented, under-resourced, and marginalized, including New Mexico's large Indigenous and Hispanic communities. The collection contains in-depth coverage of New Mexico news, elections, science, health, medicine, and arts and humanities television and radio programming from 1970 through 2020. All of these public broadcasting stations, and I'm sure many stations across the country, have boxes and shelves stacked full of tapes of original programs that were recorded onto broadcast formats that have since fallen by the wayside as technology advanced. These programs exist on obsolete and deteriorating video and audio formats that are no longer produced, like reels, pneumatics, Betacams, and mini DVs, making it difficult to find a working machine to play them on, let alone the resources and training to preserve them. We had all of these materials shoved away in lofts, basements, and even an old men's room, and we didn't know what to do with them, but we knew how valuable they were. And and we weren't alone. Almost 25 years ago, the Library of Congress recognized the immense cultural value of public broadcasting as a source for documenting the historic record. In a report on television and video preservation, the Library of Congress stated that it is still not easy to overstate the immense cultural value of this unique audiovisual legacy, whose loss would symbolize one of the great conflagrations of our age, tantamount to the burning of Alexandria's library in the age of antiquity. I know that may sound dramatic, but it's also accurate. You may be wondering why we're so worried about losing these collections in particular. Well, magnetic media has a very short lifespan, much shorter than that of paper documents or photographs. In fact, in 2012, the Library of Congress issued its National Recording Preservation Plan, stating that analog media formats must be digitized within the next 15 or 20 years before further degradation makes preservation efforts all but impossible. Since it's already 2021, we are literally in a race against time to preserve public media, and more generally, all cultural and historical records stored on magnetic tape, including analog media in your collections. This urgency led to the creation of the American Archive of Public Broadcasting, or AAPB. Is a collaboration between the Library of Congress and GBH Educational Foundation, a public broadcasting station in Boston, Massachusetts, with the mission to coordinate a national effort to preserve significant historical content created by public media and provide a centralized web portal for access to the unique programming aired by public stations over the past 70 plus years. The AAPB was conceived by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in 2011, and in 2013, the Library of Congress and GBH were awarded co-stewardship of the initiative. The Library of Congress ingested and preserved the initial collection of 40,000 hours. GBH created a website for public access to the collection, and together they developed policies and plans for growing the archive and sustaining it in the future. In 2015, AAPB launched their online reading room at americanarchive.org, where AAPB provides online access to thousands of digitized programs in the collection for research, educational, and informational purposes. Users anywhere in the U.S. can access a wide range of historical public television and radio programs from the late 1940s to the present. To date, AAPB has digitized over 100,000 historic programs and original materials from stations in almost all of the 50 states. Over 50,000 programs are available in the online reading room. The entire collection is accessible on location at the Library of Congress and at GBH. Additionally, users anywhere can search an additional 2.5 million inventory records of content yet to be digitized. In 2018, AAPB came to New Mexico PBS and asked if we would be interested in partnering with them on a new kind of digitization project, a collaborative statewide project combining multiple stations' collections and allowing institutions to participate that wouldn't have had the resources to do so alone. Together, we applied for a Council on Library and Information Resources, aka CLEAR, Digitizing Hidden Collections grant, a grant that focuses on amplifying unheard voices. Lucky for us, CLEAR fully supported the idea, and in 2019, we were awarded the grants. The benefits of the collaborative structure of the project allowed us to get more bang for our buck, which also allowed CLEAR to do more with their funding, benefiting everyone involved. What kind of benefits, you may be asking? All kinds of benefits. The 5 main ones I'm going to focus on are staff, financial, knowledge, infrastructure and access, and logs. Staff/bandwidth. Most of the stations didn't have the resources to pursue a grant, hire an archivist, or manage a project like this on their own. But by combining the collections of multiple stations, we are able to hire one archivist to manage the project for all of them. Partnering with AAPB also provided Library of Congress and GBH staff support, which has been indispensable already. Financial. Many digitization vendors offer volume discounts on pricing, so by bundling multiple stations together, especially stations with only a few hundred items, we're able to package them as one project and receive significant discounts that none of the stations would have received on their own. Knowledge. When it comes to audiovisual materials, there are dozens of format and codec variations. So having someone who knows what formats to request, who helped create the PB Core metadata scheme we use, and who has vast experience dealing with special treatment and financial contingencies that arise over the course of a digitization project, someone like AAPB, has been truly invaluable. Not to mention having Library of Congress experts assisting with the technical review of our digitized files, again saving our New Mexico PBS team immense bandwidth. Infrastructure and access. Creating a system to publicly host the newly digitized files would be a challenge for many stations. Maintaining it would be even more difficult. Fortunately, AAPB already has the infrastructure for managing records, hosting access copies of files, and managing exhibits online. Additionally, their online reading room already has a growing reputation for being the go-to public media archive online and already has an established viewer base to help call attention to our materials and make them accessible to a much wider audience than any of us could gather alone. One other benefit that I think sometimes gets overlooked but is still incredibly important is that this also adheres to the locks model. Lots of copies keep stuff safe. The project allows for each New Mexico public media station to receive a copy of the digitized files, as well as giving the Library of Congress a copy and GBH a copy. By having multiple copies of the files in multiple locations across the country, we're doing the best we can to ensure that we don't lose these programs in the future, even in the event of a natural disaster. I thought it might be helpful to do a quick overview of the project as well to help illustrate how all of the organizations work together. The overall project can be broken out into 5 basic stages: inventory, digitization, cataloging and review, access, and outreach. The first stage was focused on inventorying all of the materials, labeling each tape, entering basic metadata into a spreadsheet, and then packing them for shipment to our digitization vendor. The project included 5 New Mexico public media stations spread out across the state, but since the bulk of materials were at New Mexico PBS in Albuquerque, this became the base of operations for the project. Each partner station created a basic inventory list, and during the first few months of the project, the New Mexico PBS archivist drove to each station to pick up their materials and transport them back to Albuquerque, where they were labeled and packed for shipment. Once everything was inventoried, labeled, and packed, we shipped 8 pallets off to our digitization vendor. Once our digitization vendor received the materials, we completed 2 pilots of a few items each to ensure that everything matched our requested specs. Different physical formats often require different file specifications, so doing a pilot first to ensure that the deliverables match what you expected and need can save you a lot of time and hassle later. After the pilots were approved, they dove into the rest of the transfers full steam ahead. We requested our vendor send us monthly shipments of files as they're digitized. That way the New Mexico PBS team can consistently work on cataloging and also ensure that we keep our graduate fellows busy. As we receive files back from the vendor, New Mexico PBS, Library of Congress, and GBH all conduct file reviews, both technical and content reviews, and the New Mexico PBS team does basic cataloging for each file. Our project includes over 7,000 files, so the cataloging phase will take up most of our time, and we'll continue to review, describe, and update the files probably through December. As files are reviewed and cataloged, AAPB conducts a rights review on each record before posting them online. The records are updated monthly so that the newly digitized files and descriptions are available on their website continually throughout the project. Once everything is digitized, cataloged, and posted online, we get to focus on one of the things I'm most excited about, outreach, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. So right now, we're about 9 months into the project, and we're in the thick of it. We've completed both of our pilots. We're receiving monthly shipments of digitized files from our vendor, and myself and 2 graduate fellows are working on reviewing and cataloging the digitized files. We're on track to have everything digitized by November and available online a month or 2 after. But as I mentioned earlier, files are being updated and uploaded as we go, so some of the newly digitized content is already available online. We're also just about to launch, and hopefully by the time you're watching this, we have launched a website for the project that features newly digitized materials, blog posts about the project and content, as well as educational resources. Still to come, and again, one of the things I'm most looking forward to is outreach. We really wanted to make sure to focus on outreach with this project, since the materials won't be used if no one knows they're here or how or why to use them. We're already planning several online exhibits, partnering with some community organizations for screenings, and creating LibGuides in partnership with schools and libraries. One of our partner stations is also planning a transcribe-a-thon, where the community gets involved in generating transcripts for newly digitized content. And we're continuing to look for new ways to connect the materials to our community. So more to come in the future. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions about the New Mexico Public Media Digitization Project, New Mexico PBS, or the American Archive of Public Broadcasting, please don't hesitate to reach out or let me know during the live Q&A after the presentations. Thanks.
Thanks. And now I will pass it over to Mary and Katie.
Okay, give me just one moment. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay? All right, great. Whoops. Here we go. Hello and welcome to our presentation on collaborating to build web archives in Texas. I'm Katie Rojas from the University of Texas at San Antonio, and my co-presenters are Lauren Coe from the University of North Texas and Mary Manning, University of Houston. I'm going to start our presentation with Mary.
Web Archiving Texas. Established at Web Archiving Texas meeting hosted by TPL at Baylor in November 2019. The purpose is to build a community around web archiving in Texas, bring people together to share skills and resources to accomplish shared goals, and amplify our work that impacts the national and international web archiving community. Here's a link to our listserv. We have quarterly meetings on fourth Tuesdays, and anyone is welcome to join the group, whether they are working at a TBL member institution or not. To request to join the link or the meetings, please email this address here. WARTEX goals for 2020. To establish TBL Archivate Consortium. That's done. And if you want more information on that, you can go to this link here. Another goal for 2020 is around shared resources. We're in progress with that, and there's a Confluence wiki page for the group, which is hosted by TBL. Also, we formed a working group called Avoiding Duplication Through Collaboration. And the three members of our presentations are members of that working group. Our working group was established at the February WATEX meeting in 2020. And the working group's charge is to explore how WATEX can improve collective efforts in Texas and avoid duplication of effort. Our actions to date. We've created and shared an index of all the public-facing sites that we could find of Texas web collections. And we also reported what they are collecting. We explored Cobweb and UNT tools, determined gaps and potential for use in Texas. We distributed a survey and analyzed data on web archiving practices in Texas. Texas Web Archives. We created a spreadsheet primarily derived from Archivate archives found online. And if you click this, you can see a list of them. Our spreadsheet documented the public-facing sites of Texas Web Collections and what they are collecting. This activity was useful in capturing all the collections the institution is capturing. We did a survey later, which captured what people were inspiring to do, as well as what they're focusing on. But this actually showed us everything they were collecting at one point in time, and that was summer of 2020. This allowed us to see similar collecting focuses. We saw this as less of a challenge with duplication and more of an opportunity for collaboration and collection building. What this provided was a snapshot in time, and we saw advantages for doing this yearly, but we would like to look at automated ways to update annually. Here is a word cloud of the collections that we found in summer of 2020. You can see COVID-19 is still quite big, and I bet that's even bigger now. University websites is another big collecting area, and LGBTQ is a huge collecting area. And what we were thinking as a group is that LGBT and COVID-19 would be great points of collaboration across institutions. Maybe build one collection that highlighted all of our institutions' collections in those areas. We're going to be showing a word cloud later that is survey from the survey data, and it'll look pretty similar. But what you'll see here is a lot of small collections, like art lives and Northeast India language and administration. Another thing to notice here is that there is a lot of crossover between university websites and parts of university websites like Student Life. And that is because some institutions put all of their university web pages under university websites, whereas other people collect them all as separate collections, and some universities do both. So it's really comparing apples to oranges. But what's I think important to know here is that there are probably more unique collections like the Texas Labor Collection than there are university collections, even though the university shows up so highly on this. And now I'm going to hand it over to Katie, who is going to talk about the survey.
Thank you, Mary. So I'm going to talk about our web archiving survey that we distributed to TDL member institutions. And we wanted to find out who was collecting web content, what was being collected, and how is it being collected. And if you have not already responded to this survey, we're still accepting responses. And even if you're not currently web archiving, we would still love to hear from you. We are only reaching out to Texas institutions at this time, but we may expand our efforts in the future potentially. And this link down here is the link to our survey. So our survey results, we received 17 responses. 3 of those institutions reported that they were not collecting yet, but they're planning to. And the earliest capture date for websites goes back to 1996. So quite a long time for web archives. We also had a section for open-ended comments, which allowed people to communicate things like their excitement around collaboration, or perhaps that they were having issues with things like sustained management over time of their web collections, or how their web collections were organized. So here's a word cloud that reflects the position or job titles that were reported by our respondents. We had 5 respondents who said that they were a digital archivist or something kind of similar to that. 3 respondents who said that they were at a director or management sort of leadership level. 3 university archivists, 3 archivists that were just kind of more generalist, 1 assistant archivist, and 1 programmer. And as you can see, the titles do vary. I just quantified them that way for purposes of understanding things a little bit easier. We also asked about which systems or tools the repositories were using to collect or crawl websites or web resources. And we said that people could select all the systems or tools that apply to their situation. And we also asked people to specify which tools they were using if they selected the other category. So 13 out of our 17 institutions who responded to the survey are using Archive-It. That was by far the most common tool being used. And then 5 other institutions are also using, in conjunction with Archive-It, Web Recorder, Heritrix, Browser, and other methods that you can see here on the screen. And then 1 respondent said that they were using a manual capture method. Here we have a map of Texas with the geographic representation of our survey respondents. So we have about 5 institutions in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. San Antonio, Austin, and Houston each have 2 respondents. And then with 1 response each, El Paso, San Angelo, San Marcos, Waco, College Station, and Corpus Christi. As you can see, areas like Amarillo, Lubbock, the Midland Odessa area, the Big Bend region, Abilene, the Rio Grande Valley, Far East Texas are not really represented on this map. And we're hoping that through efforts like this presentation, we can garner some more responses and get a more robust picture of web archiving in Texas. Some of you may be wondering about how the public-facing sites review compares to a survey in terms of geographic response here. And basically, it's the same sort of geographic distribution in the same areas, with the exception of 1 or 2 institutions that appeared in Far East Texas. Okay, the collecting scopes in a sort of simplified view largely indicated that people were collecting university or institutional web resources. And then 5 institutions said they were collecting COVID-19. And then 3 institutions indicated they were collecting on LGBTQIA+ resources. And finally, 6 institutions indicated they were collecting on other subjects. Now, that may sound kind of simple, but when we look at this particular word cloud, you can get a better picture of the really great diversity of things that people are collecting. And I feel like it's pretty similar to what we found with subject areas we saw in our review of public-facing sites. We saw a good deal of diversity in collecting areas, and there were less areas of overlap than we expected, which leaves room for more collaborative work instead of deduplication. And now I am going to turn it over to Lauren, who is going to talk about our next steps.
So I'm going to be talking about moving forward, summing up what we found with our data analysis and Mary's spreadsheet, where we want to go from here, and how can we get there. Overall, what we found is that participating institutions are mostly crawling pages relevant to their own institutions, the people tied to their institutions, and existing collections. So for example, Texas A&M supplements their science fiction and fantasy research collection, containing books and monographs with web archiving collections. And the University of Texas at Arlington supplements their physical Texas labor archives with websites that are relevant. We found that multiple institutions are collecting around COVID-19 and LGBTQ. We found that duplication is likely not a problem though, for reasons such as the web is big and web pages change frequently. And even when collecting around specific topics like COVID-19 and LGBTQ, institutions are focusing on their own communities. So how COVID-19 affects their students or something like that. But because we're collecting in similar areas, we see a potential for collaboration around topics or themes. So our goals for WATEX in 2021 and 2022 moving forward from our previous work are: number one, keep up to date, determine how to update lists of institutions collecting activities and implement that, and test pilot a collaborative collection. So determine who wants to collaborate, determine how we'll collaborate, and implement that. So for that first goal, keeping up to date, as Mary mentioned, we would like to identify a way to track who is collecting what, perhaps yearly, but through a more automated method than having Mary look at everyone's archived collections. Possible avenues are, again, to use an email survey, like we did with the data that Katie shared with us, or possibly update a shared doc once a year where we contact participants and hope that they'll update a spreadsheet or something like that. Or again, we could pull information from archive. For goal number two, which is where I'm going to be focusing probably the rest of my presentation, is test piloting a collaborative collection. So what we took from all of this study of avoiding duplication and building better collections is that we can collaborate and work together to build a collection. To do that, we're going to need to identify a topical collection for collaboration, choose a tool for collaboratively building a seed list of URLs that we want to put into our collection, identify which institutions will contribute seeds, and develop a method and system of creating collaborative collections at a broad sense of, will we crawl web content anew for the collection that we're building together, or will we contribute existing web archiving files that are already held by institutions that could be then accessed at one access point? We'll also need to identify a place to house our collection or future collections. Why we want to do this, we've seen through our meetings with WATEX and through the data we've collected that there are benefits to collaborative collecting. By working together, we can share storage burden with Archive It, which is the service that most of the institutions participating in our survey use. They have a storage limit on what they can crawl in a year, but we can spread that across institutions or collect separately from an institution's Archive It account, and thus allow them to collect more without hitting their quota. We also would be able to share crawling resources. So for those institutions who are not yet doing web archiving, but because of things like not having access to a crawler or a service like Archive It, they can still participate in building a collection. And we would also be able to share in staffing. What we found through our conversations with WATEX is that a lot of people working in web archives in institutions, that's not their full-time job. It's kind of a side duty of a university archivist or a digital archivist or a librarian or some other staff. By working together, we can also get greater input from more diversified curators to fill collection gaps and cover areas that might otherwise be underrepresented. We all have a different perspective on things. So by building a seed list of URLs and websites that we want to capture, we'll have better coverage. And that leads to point 3, that the previous 2 bullets add up to having a collection with more content and better coverage of the topic. And this leads to serving patron research needs for content that covers more than what you would have been able to collect by yourself. For example, for institutions that focus on COVID-19 just around their immediate geographic area, if someone was wanting to research the web resources more broadly in Texas, collaborative collecting could help with that. Collaborative collecting would also be an avenue for institutions who don't yet have a web archiving program or web archiving tools to use, help shape a collection that could serve their users. And it would also provide a product for such institutions to gain buy-in from management for adding or expanding a web archiving program. So I gave benefits, so I have to just be fair and throw in a few challenges to collaboration. There are questions of how are we going to coordinate this? And right now we're doing that with WATEX, but it does take people volunteering. So that's one challenge. Who's going to host these shared collections? That could be one of our institutions, or it could be a third-party service or hosting. We haven't decided that yet for this test pilot. We also need to determine what collaborative collecting areas will be suitable. Right now, we're basing it on the data we've collected from looking at what our participating institutions are doing in Archive-It and what they've reported through the survey that we did. And how much is this going to cost? Of course, that's always a challenge with anything you do in archives or libraries. But we think we can do this at low to no cost by utilizing what we already have at our different institutions. So choosing a collection. For starting on this test pilot project, we've got to have a topic. Based on what we've seen from our data analysis of our survey and our survey of Archive-It, we're looking at tentatively going with LGBTQ. COVID-19 could be another option, though, because it's got a time scope there, it may or may not go on into the future for some institutions. Once we decide on a collection topic, we have seed curation to plan. This is where we select which web pages and websites we want to put into our archive. Doing this could be something like using spreadsheets, though having done this in previous projects, it gets a little unwieldy with who's shared what spreadsheets and where we're storing them, and if things need to change. But we've also found that there are open source tools for building lists of URLs to crawl that allow us to also add metadata and identify who is crawling what. This was actually part of our 2020 work, where we looked at open source options for seed curation and the Cobweb and the UNT nomination tool. Both of these tools are designed around the concept of building topical or thematic collections, at least building a list of URLs that you'd like to include in such a collection. A few points for each of these. Cobweb has user accounts, ability to say what you're going to be archiving for yourself or your institution, report what you did actually crawl. Any user can create projects and they're searching through projects and URLs and descriptive tagging of projects. The nomination tool, which disclaimer is developed by UNT for who I work, has flexible metadata, more report generation for URL lists. There are no user accounts, which can be seen as a benefit or a drawback. Administration of projects is centralized, and there's URL searching within the project. And it, as I said, is hosted and developed by one of the Texas Digital Library members. So there is some possible tech support available there. Once we determine which seed collecting tool we'll use, we'll need to determine who's going to participate with us. Right now, the idea is to reach out via WATEX and Texas Digital Library and presentations like this, and then hope that institutions that we get the word out to will spread the word to other institutions, so that hopefully we can get a lot of Texas participants. And finally, we're going to be considering how we build and access this collaborative collection. Will we be pulling existing web archiving files from institutions' relevant collections into S3 storage or Google Drive and accessing it with Web Recorder's replay webpage? Or another option would be to have one institution collect with open source tools and host on existing infrastructure. For example, these tools listed, Heritrix, Browser, Web Recorder, Open Wayback, Highwayback, they're all tools that UNT runs and could tentatively provide for use to building these collaborative collections. Another option, and definitely the most expensive, would be to share a new archived account specifically for the purpose of collaborative collections for WATEX. But we do have a discount from TDL, so we might be able to leverage that. But yeah, so that is what we're looking at to potentially set up our collaborative collection. And that's it. So thanks for listening to our presentation.
Hey, thank you, ladies. Megan, Katie, and Mary are here to answer questions. You can put those in the chat.
If while we're waiting for a question, if you guys don't mind, I have one for Katie and Mary, actually. So if we wanted to kind of follow up on this project, do you guys have like an estimated timeline for when you're going to be working on the pilot, or is it just kind of in progress and definite?
So we don't have a firm timeline on anything, you know, other than what was kind of mentioned for the goals. I do think our goals are a little ambitious in terms of like being able to like all come together and create a collaborative collection within 1 year. I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm just saying it's ambitious. That's just my perspective on it, but I think it's a good goal. And yeah, Courtney, thank you. Courtney Mama, she is with TDL and she has been leading our WATEX group and she's been awesome. And if you're a TDL member, she was able to get us a consortial discount. So we were really excited about that. Yeah, I imagine that we will continue to just, you know, put information out there. I've done like a little mini baby presentation at like the TDL member forum, and anybody can look at the website, the Confluence website, and see information there. I think there might be a link to the survey there. And yeah, this is just going to keep going. I imagine if we do, you know, make some really good progress, we'll try to present again, or, you know, share through other professional avenues like, you know, the SSA newsletter or something like that.
And I agree with what Katie was saying. I think that what Lauren was talking about was just kind of our brainstorming on what we could do with the data that we found. In a lot of ways, it's aspirational, but it's definitely something that we want to do. But as Courtney said, we need a lot of volunteers.
Do you guys mind posting? I'm not sure if the slides are going out after this. Do you mind posting the link to the survey in like the chat so that we can have quick access to it? Thanks.
I'll take care of that right now.
If anyone else has any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll get them answered. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm curious what people are doing in other states other than Texas around web archiving, if there's any sort of either formal or informal collaborations or not, or whether that's something y'all are thinking about doing. Leslie, would it be okay to ask people to raise their hands or unmute, or would you want to do that?
Yeah, I guess we could raise hands. I'm not sure if y'all can unmute, to be honest, but I could try if someone raises their hand.
Oh, no. Then never mind. Put it in the chat.
Okay, I think I can unmute, so if anyone wants to speak up. Okay, you can unmute yourselves if you have anything to say.
I'm going to shoot for another question. This one's from Megan. So Megan, I want to hear about some of like maybe the community partners that couldn't have done this work on their own. And I'd like to learn a little more about that.
Sure. So the community partners that we're organizing with, most of these materials are station materials, and then we're kind of just working with them to find things that are relevant to their collection. So a lot of our indigenous materials, no one has had access to. We have recordings of, languages that are barely spoken anymore. And so we are planning, luckily New Mexico PBS has some really great roots with all of the community already. So we already have these partnerships. But we are planning some outdoor screenings. We're planning some events. We're hoping to plan some events in the future also where we can kind of go to areas, including like our indigenous populations, and gather materials that they might have to do in future projects so we can show them what we have. And as we build that trust and build that relationship, hopefully end up getting some of their materials as well to include going forward. I will say for the partner stations, a lot of our partner stations across New Mexico only had like 100 tapes, only had 200 tapes, and had no way the power, the manpower or the staffing or anything to do this. And full disclosure, I've previously worked at a digitization vendor. I actually previously worked at George Blood. And so I'm familiar with, kind of how that pricing works and how the volume discounts work. And if you only have 100 tapes to send out, and then you've got to do the pilot and the back and forth, it just, the cost of the time, it's really hard for those stations to manage. And our partner stations honestly barely had the time to get the initial inventory together. They just didn't have the manpower. But luckily, by being able to take a lot of that off of them, I've kind of been able to use their time to my best interest. And so by getting just a very basic inventory at first and us being able to flesh out what we can, I've now been able to go back to them, send them a list of questions where then they've been able to scour what they have and provide like full program descriptions from, the 80s and just content that we would have never had. They wouldn't have had the time to find that and do this project on their own. And so we've really been able to make the best of everyone's time. And again, fortunately for us, when New Mexico PBS first heard about this, we were able to go to the universities, to all of our community organizations and get, I think we had at least 12 letters of support and of, researchers who volunteered their time to help look at these materials to make sure, again, using the indigenous materials as an example, to make sure that we're really following all of those protocols and being respectful and, caring for the materials the best way we can. So we've been able to have a lot of just unsolicited support, but also definitely the fact that I think one of our partner stations might have had enough support to do this on their own, aside from New Mexico PBS. But because we were able to help with them with that, they actually just got another grant to do the rest of their collection. So it's kind of working out for all parties, definitely. But that said, it was a new thing and it was during the pandemic. And so obviously there were, a lot of delays with that coordination. We saved time some places, we lost time others. Going to the stations to get those materials during a pandemic, was continually pushed back by travel restrictions and everything like that. So it was as we say, going with the flow to try and find how we can use our time best. And so for instances like that, where we couldn't get to the materials right away, we were in a lot of cases able to get the descriptions, so we could go ahead and parse in a lot of metadata before we even reviewed the content, assuming that it matches up to save time later. So I've been very lucky. Our whole team has been really working with this the best they can to make sure we can get it done. But
Great. Yeah, and I just wanted to put in a plug. I'm the archivist here at Louisiana Public Broadcasting. We have a partnership with the Louisiana State Archives, who has a lot of AV collections, and we have the Louisiana Digital Media Archive, where we're able to provide access to both of our collections in one place. And then we also share that with the American Archive of Public Broadcasting. So it's kind of totally different model, but and then because of the AAPB grant funding, I was able to get a job here to pay for me at first. And then they said, oh, she's valuable, so we'll keep going. So we have had some questions in the chat. So first off, I would like to know what other states are doing regarding web archiving. And also, will the presentations be available afterwards to review again? I will say the recording will be available in the virtual attendee hub, but he may be talking specifically about your PowerPoints.
if anyone has an interest for my PowerPoint, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to email it to you. I'm not sure if they will be available on the hub, but I am more than happy to send them out. And they all have full transcripts as well. So just let me know.
And same goes for us. We're happy to share, our presentation with anybody.
If anyone in the group wants to unmute and talk about what they're doing, you do have the ability to do that now. Oh, and I'm getting word that we can share your PowerPoints in the virtual attendee hub. So we'll try to get y'all information about how to do that after the presentation. Okay, well, let's jump ahead to the next question. If anyone else wants to share before the end, we can do that. Did you find that repositories doing web archiving developed relationships with the web content creators? I.e., did knowing that the websites were being preserved impact the content that was posted? Any other correlations?
Would you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. I was muted.
Oh, sure, no problem. Did you find that repositories doing web archiving developed relationships with the web content creators? I.e., did knowing that the websites were being preserved impact the content that was posted, or any other correlations?
That wasn't a question that we asked on our survey, but Katie, I'm going to put you on the spot and say, I know that you guys web archive a lot in the community, but did you reach out to the members of the community whose whose archives you were archiving?
So speaking for, my work at UT San Antonio, we do not. We don't ask permission in advance, but we also, this past year, completely overhauled our web archiving program and wrote an actual web archiving policy in which we decided that we were not going to collect websites of private individuals. And we have a team that, we meet regularly, and we can review and discuss as a group what we want to collect, and just keep that in consideration. If thinking about the creator's intent, obviously we don't know for sure one way or another, but say for example it was the website of an elected public official, we would expect that that information is not intended to be private. It's out there for people to consume and see. So just using our judgment on that and thinking about it that way.
Okay, any other questions? You can post them in the chat. Not seeing anything. If our presenters have any kind of closing thoughts they want to share, feel free to do that.
I'll just add that doing a 15-minute presentation on a whole public media digitization project, obviously there is not enough time to fit everything in. So if anyone has any questions, there are a lot of small technical, details and things to consider if you're working on one of these projects, and things that I have certainly learned while doing it. So please feel free to reach out if you ever have questions about that. I'm happy to dig into it more. And also thank you again, Leslie, and thank you for the whole conference committee for putting everything together.
Thank you. Mary, you should be able to speak now. I'm sorry, I had to make you a co-host again.
Yeah, for some reason I keep falling off as host. But I kind of wanted to go back very, very quickly to the question about other places in the country that are doing this. And we kept saying that we were going to try to find that out, but we didn't. And it looks like in California, the California Digital Library is one place where they're working on web archiving together. But that was like such a good question. And we really couldn't find a lot of other places that were doing it. And I don't know if Courtney Muma is still here, but I feel like it's my job to put people on the spot today. But Courtney, do you know of any other places around the country? Okay, NY Arc is pretty awesome, says Courtney. So thank you, Courtney. So there are other places that are doing it in the country, but I think there's a lot more room for people to do this because there's still a lot of institutions that don't have the funds to purchase archive it. They've offered like a cheaper version now, but it doesn't come with tech support. And I think a lot of people can't really do it without the tech support. So there's some other tools out there like Conifer that used to be web recorder, but they're really not sustainable because they take a long time. They're kind of point and click, but they're really, really, really good for capturing smaller sites.
I hope we didn't lose Mary.
Oh, she did freeze. Dang.
I do see in the chat that Courtney's posted a case study about Kansas.
Right, a way for other people at organizations that don't have web archives to contribute content and maybe make a kind of case in point for their administrators that we all need to be doing web archiving, because it's really not a new thing, as Katie pointed out. The first place in Texas that we found was 1996. So, and as people at University Archives know, that's really where a lot of information that's the only way to preserve the information, because that's the only place it ever was online, and when it's gone, it's gone.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so if it's okay with the speakers, I think we can end early. So I want everyone to please join me in a virtual round of applause for our speakers who did a great job. And we appreciated hearing about your statewide collaborative projects. And upcoming on the schedule, I think we have a break with vendors at 2:30. So be sure to go check that out. And we'll see you then. Thank you so much.